All right, we are live. Let's see if I can make sure this is working everywhere else as well. Good evening to everybody. We'll get started in just a second. We have Den here who is helping out with moderation. So if you have questions, if you have comments to make, leave them in the comments section. And anything I need to see, I will get to in between stories. Remember, you can always support the channel at patreon.com/Hemant. I appreciate that. Or you can subscribe to the newsletter for free at friendlyatheist.com. I am going to get started in just a second. Let me make sure I have everything I need and people will show up. Um, there's so many things I'm excited to talk about here. All right. Let me start off tonight with an update on our favorite person, Ryan Walters, the superintendent of public instruction in Oklahoma. And just in case you missed out on what the heck this guy is up to and you didn't see what I posted last week, I'll give you a quick rundown of where we were at a week ago. Because if you don't know, Ryan Walters is a Christian nationalist who runs the public school system in Oklahoma. He's done everything in his power to just shove Jesus into the public school system any way he can. But a couple of weeks ago, during a closed door meeting of the State Board of Education, two of the State Board of Education members were in this guy's office. There were only two people who had a visual sight of the television in Ryan Walters' office, and they said they saw something that they should not have seen. And by the way, in case I didn't put this up there, this is our friend Ryan Walters, the guy who's always holding the Bible everywhere he goes. But yeah, these two board members, this is what they said last week. I'll zoom in here. Their names are Ryan Deathridge and Becky Carson. And again, if you want to see the longer video on what they saw, I'm not going to go over all of this, but this is important. Deathridge said he noticed the video first while a parent was speaking about something, and as he weighed his options about how to bring the video to the room's attention, Carson noticed the nudity. I was like, what am I seeing? ... Is that woman naked? And then she thought she had a bodysuit on. And I'm like, that is not a bodysuit. Those are her nipples. And then she got a full body view. This is what Becky Carson saw on Ryan Walters' TV. And then later on, she points out, like, what is on your TV? What am I watching? And Ryan Walters is like, what? What are you talking about? So he acknowledged something was on the screen that should not have been on the screen. And this is what the whole news was about Ryan Walters basically a week ago. Board of Education members saw nudity, full frontal nudity on his television. And they said a couple things. They said it was clearly not safe for work. They said it looked kind of retro. Like, this is not modern stuff you would see. This is like someone who likes vintage adult content. And Ryan Walters was so quick to be like, I can't turn this off. I don't know what it is. And then let's never talk about it again, which is why those two board members went to the press. It wasn't clear what he was watching, though. All we kind of knew based on what those board members said when they went to the media about this is that it wasn't explicitly sexual in the sense that it's not like there was penetration involved, but there were naked women on the screen, and they did not understand what Ryan Walters could possibly be watching that involved that. Deathridge also said he saw multiple people on screen who were naked and that there was some kind of chiropractic table, which was weird. Walters later said to a Republican leader that he thought when he saw what was on the screen, there was a doctor and a nurse and like a white lab coat. So none of this really made any sense. No one could explain what he was watching. Ryan Walters pretended like it never even happened. And this is where it got kind of weird, because during this entire time, Ryan Walters, who clearly saw this thing on the TV screen, And despite two board members saying we both saw the same things on the TV screen, this is what Ryan Walters said to the press. Check this out right here. On Friday, Walters responded to the allegations with the following statement. Some of these board members are blatantly dishonest and cannot hide their political agenda. It is disappointing that they are more interested in creating distractions than getting work done for Oklahoma families. They're blatantly dishonest, even though all of the people involved seem to say the exact same thing about what they saw on the screen, including Ryan Walters. How could they be dishonest when Ryan Walters is like, yeah, there were naked people on my TV screen? Ryan Walters, director of communications, as I mentioned last week, told reporters it was embarrassing that journalists were even covering this. He said, how dare you write a junk tabloid lie? Ryan Walters blamed all of this on a hostile board that would say and do anything except tell the truth. And by the way, Ryan Walters said one other thing. He actually held a news conference, and I played a clip of that for you last week. Look at what he said in the news conference. Walters previously accused the three new board members and Governor Kevin Stitt of a character assassination. Kevin Stitt appointed those two board members, and even though they're all Republicans, and as far as I know, they're all very hardcore MAGA Republicans, Kevin Stitt and Ryan Walters do not like each other. So Ryan Walters was blaming the governor for setting him up. But look at what Walters said. These board members have a lot to answer for, and so does the governor of the state of Oklahoma. Did he direct these board members to lie about me? Did he direct his board members to go in and disrupt everything in these board meetings? Did he have the board fight against bringing private schools? Blah, blah, blah. No one cares. So Ryan Walters' position on this is those two board members lied about what they saw on the TV, that they might have been set up by the governor to try to take Ryan Walters down, even though Ryan Walters said in other interviews, yeah, there were naked people on the screen, but I swear it's not me. Okay, so that's kind of where we were at about a week ago. The other thing that happened is that there were investigations launched by the state's Office of Management and Enterprise Services, OMES, and the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office, and the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. Because of all the things that are wrong with this country right now, this is the thing everyone has to work together to figure out. Now, here's what I did not really get to last week. OMES, one of those investigative groups, they hired an outside security firm called Alias Cybersecurity to do an investigation into the computer Ryan Walters was using and the TV. And was Ryan Walters watching something that was screencast on the TV? What's the deal? And this company ended up issuing a 32-page preliminary report about a week ago. And the long story in all of this is they basically said, we don't have any definitive evidence that will confirm or refute what was seen on that TV or why it was seen on that TV. We don't actually know the answer for the main question all of you want to know. But the one thing they said in this report that I do want to highlight is this thing right here, because this is in a section on page 7 called Detailed Findings and Observations. And look at this. At the time of examination, the television's input source was set to TV, indicating it was operating in the default Samsung Smart TV application. When initially powered on, the television displayed Samsung TV Plus channel 1204, Movie Hub Action. They even included this picture of them turning on the TV and saying, do you see channel 1204, Movie Hub Action? It's like the Samsung Smart TV. This is what they default to when you turn it on. Okay, whatever. I don't know why that's important necessarily, right? So the bottom line is there are multiple investigations still going on. None of them have issued their final reports on what happened. Literally, as I'm filming this right now, they have not issued final reports. But the Republican Speaker of the Oklahoma House said, I'm not waiting for the reports to come through. I have some information that I think all of you ought to know. So he went ahead and issued his own statement. And this is where it gets kind of interesting. This guy, seriously, he posted this on his own speaker website. House Speaker comments on the SDE investigation. This is Kyle Hilbert. He is the Speaker of the Oklahoma House. And I'm going to basically tell you what he said because he spends a lot of words trying to explain something pretty simple. But here's what Kyle Hilbert, the Speaker of the House, says happened. He says that he has heard back from Samsung, the people who made that smart TV. And what he says is based on that preliminary report I just showed you, channel 1204, the movie channel, is what automatically appears when you turn on the TV. It's not because someone decided to turn on that channel, it's just the one that's the default. And what Hilbert says is the day they were having the meeting, Samsung has confirmed to him that there were two movies airing in the morning when the State Board of Education was having their meeting. Movie number one is a 1985 movie called The Protector, starring Jackie Chan, one of these old, fighting action movies. And the other one was a 2017 movie called The Foreigner. Those two movies were playing back to back during the State Board of Education meeting. So then the question is, if that's what they were watching on his TV, does it have the scenes? Do either of those movies have the scenes that these people were describing? And according to Kyle Hilbert, he looked up, on IMDb. He didn't actually watch the movie. He's a good Christian, I assume. Thank you very much. He says that the Jackie Chan movie, The Protector, from 1985, has all the scenes that match up with what everyone says they saw. And here's what he says at the very end of this. In my opinion, the most plausible explanation for what occurred that day is that the television, which had only been in the superintendent's office for fewer than 2 months, automatically launched Samsung's free streaming service and began playing a film that contained explicit content without anyone in the room realizing it at the time. And then he added this. Additionally, it does not appear that Samsung's internal movie channels list streamable content days in advance, so a planned conspiracy would be highly unlikely. No one knew what movies they were going to play on this channel. Instead, the available evidence points to a bizarre accident involving a newly installed television defaulting to a pre-programmed channel. Okay, so then the question is, do I want to believe what a Republican Speaker of the House says about any of this? So, I will tell you, I went ahead and downloaded this movie. I got a copy of this movie in all legal and fair ways, because here's the thing. There are I wouldn't say G-rated. There are modified versions of this movie available on the full movies on YouTube. You could watch The Protector right now, but they are slightly sanitized because there were scenes in the movie that people knew if we keep those scenes in the movie, we can't air it on like basic cable. And so they modified those scenes or deleted some scenes. And so you could watch the whole movie. So let me tell you what shows up in this movie. By the way, Samsung has not confirmed that the TV automatically goes to its streaming movie channel when you turn it on. And importantly, this explanation that Kyle Hilbert offered has not been confirmed by Ryan Walters or the two board members who were at that meeting and saw the stuff. But here's the question. Does that movie, the Jackie Chan movie, The Protector, does it have these scenes? Well, here's what I can tell you. The Protector does include plenty of nudity. But the question is there full frontal nudity with multiple people along with like a chiropractic table, even if there's no actual depictions of sex? The answer is yes to all of that. In fact, the movie has a scene where Jackie Chan and his co-star are being hunted down by a crime boss. And to hide from the crime boss, they decide to go to a massage parlor, as one does. And in that massage parlor, they are both super excited because these young, hot women are massaging them. And yeah, they perform sexual favors, or at least that's what's implied in this scene. And there is a woman who appears who takes off her clothes and it's full frontal nudity. Now, is all of that gratuitous? Yes. Is any of it necessary to advance the plot of the film? Nope. It's just there for the male gaze. But that's what it is. They do have a scene in there where there are women walking around without clothing, and you could see the stuff. You could understand why the guy said, I saw a chiropractic table. Yeah, they were massage tables, and they are in that scene. By the way, in that scene, it turns out the people giving the women giving the men the massage, they're with the enemy, and they try to kill the men, and then a fight ensues, because of course it does. Okay, what about the thing Ryan Walters said where he's like, I saw a doctor and a nurse and a lab coat? That wasn't in the massage scene, so what the hell is he talking about? Well, guess what? Like 30 minutes later in the movie, I guess this was still on the screen, there's another scene in the movie where the crime boss is running his drug laboratory. And in this laboratory, there are a bunch of women working in the drug lab, not wearing any clothes. Why not? You're in a laboratory. Shouldn't you be wearing some kind of protection? Yeah, I guess. But also, I don't know. It's 1985. Maybe they just thought, let's just put naked people there. People will watch the movie. But there are women in the scene who are basically topless in the entire scene. There are also people who walk in wearing lab coats, then take off the lab coats, and they're wearing nothing underneath. So are there scenes with multiple naked people? The answer is yes. That is also in the movie. So it sounds like there's a plausible explanation for what these people saw because it matches up with everything we've heard. Is it a retro movie? Yeah, it was a 1985 movie. It looks old. So I could understand why they think this doesn't look like something you're just watching today. It includes the descriptions of what they were seeing and why they were scandalized at first, even though it didn't look like sex was happening on screen. Like it does match up with everything they're saying. Now, the easiest way to confirm all this, I think, would be to show part of that movie to those two board members and just say, look, is this what you saw on his TV? And for some reason, those two board members have not done that yet. And they haven't confirmed that that movie is what they saw. I'm not sure why they are not saying that or refuting it, but they haven't done that. But here's where I'm coming in on all of this. I am willing to admit that explanation, even though it's coming from a Republican Speaker of the House and not any of the investigators, I could admit if that actually sounds kind of plausible to me as well. And I'm willing to say, if that's true, it does exonerate Ryan Walters and that he wasn't just randomly watching adult content on his computer and it happened to be broadcast on the screen everyone was watching. Barring some other revelation, I don't think he was purposely watching adult content during a work meeting. There's a lot of reasons not to like Ryan Walters. This does not appear to be one of them. But here's what I want to know. Where the hell is Ryan Walters' apology? Because you all heard what he said about those board members. He called them liars. He said this is part of a conspiracy to get me. They're making this stuff up. Clearly, if you want to accept the theory that there was a movie playing on this TV that no one intended to watch, then you also have to accept that Ryan Walters was lying when he was slandering his other board members. He accused them of lying because they were hostile. His communications director said they were spreading a junk tabloid lie. Walters said they were being blatantly dishonest and trying to hide their political agenda. He said Governor Kevin Stitt, who appointed those two members to the board, was directing those board members to lie about me. And in fact, one other thing I saw is that this still exists. Check this out. This is a petition that right-wing people are spreading to make those two board members resign from their seats for spreading what they claim is a lie about Ryan Walters. This is a petition that's still out there. So that's what Ryan Walters has been up to this whole time. If he wants everyone to believe that, see, you guys, this movie was airing, I had nothing to do with it, then where is his apology for lying about what the board members saw? How come he's not saying he's sorry for accusing those two board members of conspiring against him? And I also want to show you this. Those two board members have spoken out since this explanation went public. And again, I don't know why they didn't confirm or deny that that movie is what they were noticing, but look at what they said. What we saw on TV is content that would get the certificate of any teacher in this state revoked had it showed up on a classroom TV. Like if some teacher accidentally showed that movie in their school, in their class, that teacher would be out of a job. I believe that 100%. Now we have to ask the question, why did Superintendent Walters lie about the TV being connected to the internet and what he saw on the TV that day? He repeatedly called the board members liars and attempted to destroy our reputations. Yes, I want to know that too. Ryan Walters, even if you say the scandal here is not that he was watching adult content, then the scandal is he was lying about his fellow board members, even though he knew damn well they were telling the truth. That's the scandal then. And you know what Ryan Walters has posted since this explanation came out? He has not said anything about, see, I'm not guilty. He posted this instead. This is a GIF, however you want to pronounce it, from the movie Tombstone, where the guy playing Wyatt Earp says, "Hell's coming with me." Basically a threat. I'm coming after you. I'm bringing hell along with me, and I'm going to threaten you with a gun for those of you who have wronged me. Which, I don't know. First of all, I don't think it's wise to say I'm coming after the people who came after me with a weapon. That seems over the top. And also, I'm not sure Ryan Walters should be quoting decades old movies right now. That's what got him in this mess. But here's my point. His refusal to say he's sorry for spreading lies, that is not just political arrogance. It reveals like this rotting foundation beneath his conservative Christian persona. This guy, Ryan Walters, demands purity from educators. You know what else he did this week? He's announced that if you are a new teacher, Oklahoma has a public teacher shortage. He said if you're a new teacher coming in from a woke state like California, he's going to make you take an America First assessment that basically requires those new teachers to say America is the best and transgender people don't exist. That's what Ryan Walters was up to this week, trying to distract everybody from this story. So he has a purity test for educators, yet when Ryan Walters was at the center of this humiliating scandal, like what happened? Even if it was accidental, it shows you how he treats his other colleagues. He lashed out with lies and smears and conspiracy theories. He bore false witness against his fellow board members, which, by the way, if he ever read the Bible, he would know that's one of the 10 commandments, the things that you're not supposed to do, even though he wants the 10 commandments in every classroom across the state. So the movie theory, it may explain the nudity on the TV in his office, but it doesn't excuse Ryan Walters' conduct. His behavior tells you everything you need to know about his leadership. Right? And this is a guy, Ryan Walters, who very likely is going to run for governor of that state soon. And what have we learned from all this? We already knew this, but what has this whole incident confirmed? That he is fundamentally a shitty human being who he can't take responsibility for anything, even if it's an accident. He just will spread lies to deflect blame on other people. Like, it shows you how quickly Ryan Walters will throw other people under the bus, even when they're telling the truth. And now, instead of owning up to any of it, he's quoting Tombstone and promising to rain fire and fury like he's some wannabe cowboy god. Like, it's just insulting to every educator who has been held to a higher standard than this guy who's supposedly leading them. All right, I'm going to pause there for now. What questions we got about Ryan Walters? Didn't he also appoint Walters? You're talking about Governor Kevin Stitt. Yeah, he did appoint Walters to a different position a while back. And then Ryan Walters was elected to the superintendent of public instruction role. And now those two are feuding because Ryan Walters makes everything all about himself. He takes after Trump in that regard. He thinks you give him a little bit of power, he's going to blow it up and pretend to be king of the world. And now Ryan Walters very much, I mean, I think the funniest thing about Ryan Walters is he did all of this, in my opinion, to try to become the Secretary of Education. And then Trump went with the wrestling lady. And so Ryan Walters is still stuck in Oklahoma. So now he's just mad at the world. Taking one for the team. I watched portions of a Jackie Chan movie from 40 years ago for you. Where are your donations on YouTube? Ryan streams movies while at work. Listen, even if that were the case, which he shouldn't be doing because he has a job to do, and that was a Board of Education meeting, it sounds like, if you believe this explanation, all he did is turn on the TV and the TV itself automatically went to that channel. By the way, I have seen comments online from different people who said they have the same type of TV and it totally defaults to that streaming service on the Samsung Smart TV. So it is entirely possible he was on task at work. You know, the best case scenario, the best case version of this story is that Ryan Walters was trying to dismantle the public education system in Oklahoma, but he got deviated from that because adult content appeared on that TV screen. So even if you say he didn't do that on purpose, the alternative is, well, then he was not doing that, but he was trying to screw over children in a different way. Even if he was innocent regarding the nudity, his response attacking teachers and lies about being cleared is far more upsetting. Yep, that is my take on it as well. That now is the real scandal. How this guy acts when there was an innocent mistake made and people told the truth about it. And he's claiming, yeah, it was an innocent mistake, but also those people were lying about it. Which is it? You don't get to choose like one or the other, because the excuse that exonerates you and the fact that they were not lying, they go hand in hand. All right, I'm going to jump to a different story. Give me just a second here. And get some water. Okay. I don't know if this story really penetrated through the atheist world very much, but I think it's worth talking about. This guy right here, his name is Brent Leatherwood, and he is a leader in the Southern Baptist Convention, or at least he was a leader. This is the headline that appeared last week. And you could see it says Brent Leatherwood steps down as ERLC president. And what is the ERLC? That is the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention. The ERLC is basically the part of the Southern Baptist Convention that says, hey, politicians, you want to know where Southern Baptists stand on abortion or LGBTQ rights? We represent the policy wing of the SBC. We tell you where we stand on these issues. And remember, like, just to remind you of the structure here, the Catholic Church is very much a top-down hierarchy. You have the Pope, you have the Vatican, you have these cardinals who like set the stage for all the Catholic churches below them. The Southern Baptist Convention does not have one leader who dictates what their beliefs are. They have like thousands and thousands of churches that say, hey, we would be more powerful if we banded together. So let's donate money to a central organization. They handle mission trips and things like that. So there is a small group of men who kind of run the ins and outs of the organization, but they don't get to dictate policy. So there is like a president of the SBC. There is this policy wing of the SBC, but really those people are supposed to do like the paperwork of the SBC. They don't get to tell you what everyone in the organization stands for. If you're lucky, maybe they're good representatives of your religion, right? So Brent Leatherwood, he was the leader of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. And just to be clear, I don't think this guy is a good guy. His beliefs are really disgusting. Um, and I'm going to tell you about his beliefs in a second. But here's what you need to know about the ERLC. A lot of Southern Baptists really hate the ERLC, which doesn't make sense. Like, if that's the policy wing of the Southern Baptists, why would all these conservative Southern Baptists not like them? But they dislike the ERLC so much that for like the past 2 years, when they get together for their annual meeting, they have tried to abolish that entity altogether. They tried to like vote to dismantle the ERLC 2 years ago. They didn't get the majority that they needed. They tried again a couple of months ago when they had their annual meeting, and they only got 43% of the votes to get rid of it. So they haven't been able to do it. But when 43% of the delegates are like, let's get rid of that entire part of the SBC, something is amiss. So why don't they like this guy? Well, just to be clear, I want to remind you, this is not a good guy. Let me tell you about some of Brent Leatherwood's beliefs and what the ERLC stands for. He has pushed for the conservative Christian version of religious liberty, which is that if you are a conservative Christian, your beliefs override civil rights protection and anti-discrimination laws. So if you're an anti-gay bigot who runs a bakery, your rights matter more than like a trans person or a gay person who wants to buy a cake from you. That's where he stands on that. He opposes abortion rights. Of course he does. He has called for Planned Parenthood to be defunded entirely. Brent Leatherwood has said that in vitro fertilization is immoral. This is a quote he said. 1 million preborn children are being held in IVF clinics around the country, as if like fertilized eggs in IVF clinics are being held hostage by liberals. He has defended the Israeli government's genocide in Gaza. He wanted to make life more miserable for trans people by preventing trans girls from playing sports. And he wants to override doctors' recommendations for any possible medical interventions for trans people altogether. So that's Brent Leatherwood for you. He is a conservative who has spent his career promoting conservative politics. Before he was the head of the ERLC, he actually was working as, I want to make sure I'm saying this right, he was working for the Tennessee Republican Party. He was their executive director. He was the director of communications for the Tennessee General Assembly, which was overwhelmingly Republican. So you get the idea here. Brent Leatherwood is not the hero of this story. He is an awful person with very horrible, horrible beliefs. So part of me is like, oh, this guy resigned from something? Too bad, his loss, whatever. But the thing that was so striking about this is, why are conservatives so happy this guy is gone? Shouldn't they be rooting for this guy? He seems like one of them. And this is where this gets interesting, because they've been going after this guy for years now. So why are they so mad? Well, here's one example of why they're mad. A couple years ago, the ERLC put out this. This is, look at this, the 2025 Public Policy Agenda. And what this is when the ERLC or other Southern Baptist leaders are meeting with politicians, maybe lobbying them on issues they care about, this packet basically says, this is where we stand as a whole largest Protestant denomination in the country. This is where we stand on the issues. But if you go down all the way down here somewhere, what do they say about immigration? Because they have a whole section somewhere. I don't know where it went anymore. But anyway, they have a whole section on immigration. And look at some of the stuff they say here. We support a permanent solution for dreamers. These are kids who were born in the United States. Maybe their parents were not citizens. And now the Trump administration wants to deport all these kids to countries they've never been to. It's cruelty. There's no other way around that. And what the SBC was saying is, no, we support a solution for dreamers. Like, give them a pathway to citizenship, which is obviously the humane thing to do. The ERLC has also said, yeah, support criminal justice reform. Okay, I'm going to go back up here for a second. Preserve the refugee resettlement program. Like, there are countries where people are leaving really dangerous places and they try to make a home in the United States, but the United States isn't giving them a way to become citizens down the line. We're not helping them. We're like kicking them back out. So the ERLC is saying, no, we want to have a solution for those refugees who really need our help. And by the way, in Brent Leatherwood's opinion, a lot of these people are Christians coming from countries where they are legitimately being persecuted. So of course he wants to help these refugees. They're good Christians. Um, Leatherwood actually did one other thing. This was about a year ago. No, I'm sorry. This is back in April when Trump started doing all this ICE deportations and everything. A bunch of Southern Baptist Convention pastors, they issued a statement on immigration, and one of the things they said is this: threats of mass deportation by the Trump administration and its lack of assurance to churches that ICE agents will not enter churches to carry out immigration enforcement duties has caused fear to rise among both the guilty and the innocent. Basically, these Southern Baptist preachers are saying, don't come into our churches. You're scaring our congregations. Some of us have a lot of people of color, a lot of Latinos in our congregation. You are hurting our churches. So don't send ICE into our churches. Brent Leatherwood signed off on this and he said, yeah, I agree with what these pastors are saying. But of course, as you can imagine, all the Trump loyalists in the Southern Baptist Convention, they are pissed off about that stance on immigration. Brent Leatherwood showed the slightest of humanity to people who are in tough situations, and they are like, we don't like this guy. What else are they mad about? Well, they're mad about his thoughts about gun violence, because Brent Leatherwood would like to see gun violence decrease. And Southern Baptists are like, how dare you? To be clear, none of these people want to ban assault rifles or repeal the Second Amendment, but the ERLC has said we support red flag laws that would take weapons out of the hands of people who are a proven threat to society or their families and things like that. In fact, look at this. Do you remember the Covenant Christian school shooting? There was a mass shooter who went to a Christian school and killed people. After that happened, Brent Leatherwood signed a letter with 13 Tennessee pastors, 11 of them Southern Baptists, urging support of Tennessee Governor Bill Lee's proposal to strengthen our state's order of protection laws to protect the broader population from those who are a danger to themselves or others. It's honestly the least they could do to say, if there are qualified professionals who believe person A is a threat to their family or their community, we can go in and take their guns, because they've set off these, they're giving off these red flags, right? And that was a bridge too far for a lot of Southern Baptists. By the way, Brent Leatherwood's own kids attend Covenant Christian School where this mass shooting happened. So he wasn't just saying this, his kids were caught up in what happened. They were thankfully not hurt, but obviously they were traumatized. And as a parent, he's saying, yeah, I fully support red flag laws that would prevent something like this from happening. And of course, Southern Baptists got mad at him because they want guns everywhere. What about abortion? This is a wild one to me, because Brent Leatherwood is against abortion in like every single situation, right? Like, do you remember Bart Barber was the former president of the Southern Baptist Convention, and he did an interview on 60 Minutes that was very fawning and made him look very good. But even in that interview, Bart Barber was asked, like, if a 10-year-old girl is sexually assaulted and needs an abortion, don't you think she should have the right to get an abortion? And he was like, no, because he's a horrible person too. But again, all these people agree that they don't care what your situation is. They don't care about your circumstance. They believe abortion is wrong in every single situation. Doesn't matter if you're a victim of any kind. They want to force you to have a baby. They don't care if you're a child. They want to force you to have that baby against your will. So why would these people be mad at Brent Leatherwood when it comes to abortion? Because get this, a couple of years ago, after Roe v. Wade was overturned, a lot of abortion abolitionists who want to end it all together, they had this internal fight because some people, look at this. The National Right to Life Committee, Americans United for Life, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, and the SBC's Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, they basically wrote an open letter saying whatever we are doing about abortion now that Roe v. Wade is gone, look what it says here. We state unequivocally that we do not support any measure seeking to criminalize or punish women, and we stand firmly opposed to including such penalties in legislation. Basically, strategically, what they are saying is, look, now that Roe v. Wade is overturned, we could ban abortion everywhere. But if we start saying women who have abortions should be put in jail, people are going to be mad at us. This is bad strategically. So let's just go after the doctors who are helping them. People are fine with that. They said, do not put women in jail for having abortions. Let's go after the people helping them out. And for a lot of anti-abortion nutcases, they were like, what? No, we should absolutely imprison women who have abortions. And they did not like that this guy was like, maybe we should be thoughtful to women who are in these situations. So there's that. There was one other thing that really pissed off these people. And that is, do you remember 1 year ago? I cannot believe this is literally 1 year ago, but a little over a year ago, Joe Biden dropped out of the presidential race. And very soon after, Kamala Harris won enough delegates to get that nomination. But when Joe Biden dropped out of the race, Brent Leatherwood, he wrote a statement. Look at this, the Baptist Press. It's a first-person article from Brent Leatherwood, the right decision for President Biden and America. And look at what he wrote in here. Today, July 21st, in an astonishing moment for American history, President Joseph Biden made the right decision for the country by announcing that he would no longer pursue his party's nomination for president. It was the right decision for the country, Brent said. And later on, what else did he say? I'll go back to that in a second. He basically said, yeah, Biden did something that was good. In fact, in a separate statement, look at what else he said here. We should all express our appreciation that President Biden has put the needs of the nation above his personal ambition. Despite what some partisans will say, to walk away from power is a selfless act, the kind that has become all too rare in our culture. Like, this is a guy taking a victory lap after the Democratic Party was in total chaos for like a minute there. But he was saying nice things about Joe Biden after Joe Biden dropped out. And it's not like he was saying, yay, Democrats. I just want to make that clear, because the same guy also said in that same article, this is what he said about Kamala Harris. Should delegates to the DNC confirm her as the nominee, it will be cause for considerable concern among pro-life advocates and those who hold to a biblical definition of marriage. This is what they were concerned about a year ago. If Kamala Harris gets elected, marriage will be destroyed. Because, again, he's not a good guy. He's not very smart about this stuff. But the people, the conservatives in the Southern Baptist Convention were so mad that this guy was showing any kind of grace to Joe Biden that within like a minute of that, they were demanding that Brent Leatherwood be fired. This is from one conservative commentator. This is one of the most dishonest and cynical political statements I have ever seen. No one believes that Joe Biden dropped out due to selflessness. It's almost obscene to utter something so discrediting in a moment like this. This is another one from another guy. Despite what some partisans will say, nothing in the record indicates Mr. Biden has walked away from power as a selfless act. Nothing. What else we got here? The ERLC is repeating Democrat talking points again. That is very telling. One more. Brent Leatherwood should follow Biden's lead and resign also. This is their reaction to the guy saying, hey, Biden did something good by dropping out. Good for him. And within a minute of him posting that article, the ERLC actually said Brent Leatherwood was fired. And that first lady, Megan Basham, was like, he's officially out. This is a step in the right direction. Blah, blah, blah. But it is not enough. The ERLC now needs to commit to finding leadership that will reflect the priorities of Southern Baptists. Blah, blah, blah. It must immediately sever all ties with the Soros-backed amnesty group. What the hell? This was a whole thing last year. The ERLC fired Brent Leatherwood. And then a minute later, they're like, you guys, we were just kidding. He's not really fired. Let's pretend that never happened. But again, the knives were out against this guy. This is why so many conservatives don't like this guy, because occasionally when they want him to be 100% of an 100% asshole, he's like, you guys, I'm just going to be 99% of the way horrible. And they get so mad about that. So all of this happened a year ago. He was still in the job. And now, this week, he has resigned. And what happened after this guy resigned? What basically happened is, I think the ERLC was losing money. Churches were withholding donations to the Southern Baptist Convention. That gave his critics even more ammo to use against him. And after he resigned, all of those critics were celebrating. They said, one of them said, they need to not follow the priorities of DC elites, as if that's who's guiding the Southern Baptist Convention. This is what Dusty Devers said. He's a lawmaker from Oklahoma who has the porniest name you will ever see. Brent Leatherwood is out at the ERLC. I wish him the best, but I am glad he no longer represents Southern Baptists in the political realm. They're so happy this guy is gone. And to what end? His resignation is all the more interesting when you realize that his predecessor at the ERLC, Russell Moore, he stepped away from the job as well. He was pressured to leave as well. Why? Because Russell Moore was like, Donald Trump isn't a good guy, even if I agree with a lot of his politics. Russell Moore also condemned the sexual abuse that was running rampant in the Southern Baptist Convention, and Russell Moore had the audacity to call for racial justice. And Southern Baptists don't want to hear that. So that's why Leatherwood is now out as well. I guess the only sad thing about this, because again, Brent Leatherwood is not a good guy. I'm not feeling terribly bad for him right now. The sad thing is that whoever takes that position next is only going to be worse, because who really cares about ethics if the Republican Party has decided cruelty is the point, right? If Donald Trump is your Lord and Savior, then saying we should have a compassionate policy when it comes to refugees and immigration, there's no room in the Southern Baptist Convention for that. Like, the SBC has made it very clear what it values, and it's not ethics, and it's not religious liberty, and it sure as hell isn't anything about the guy who delivered the Sermon on the Mount, which they know nothing about because they haven't actually read that part of the Bible. They pushed out a hardline conservative from the ERLC whose biggest crime was showing the slightest flicker of empathy or rationality on some issues, and they didn't like it. And they don't want any leadership that has even a hint of integrity or consistent theological grounding. They just want a lapdog for the MAGA movement, someone who genuflects to Trump, someone who treats mercy as a liability. Like, this is not a denomination grappling with political tension. This is a denomination that is just rotting from the inside, and they will punish even modest dissent. These people are all like, we're free speech warriors. And then here's a guy who's like, oh, well, I guess that means we could show some respect to brown people sometimes. And they're like, to hell with you. The ERLC is supposed to be the moral voice of the Southern Baptist Convention. And the fact is that if you show any compassion, the Southern Baptists don't want you. So they have crucified their own ethicist for daring to kind of act like Jesus, sort of. So I don't know, let him fight. But it's amazing that this is what got the guy fired. All right, what else we got here? I do have respect for those I disagree with when they have measured opinions, says Den. And yeah, like, okay, good for this guy for on some issues showing some wiggle room. Like, that is more than I could say about pretty much every elected Republican right now. So, okay, yay, he's 1% not an asshole sometimes. I will openly admit that's good on him for 1% of the time. Doesn't mean I have respect for him overall, I guess. Quick question. Why do MAGA adherents even go to church? I assume it's because they don't have friends otherwise. They need some sort of club where they can feel holier than everyone else because I don't know, they don't get out of their house much. They need to get away from the internet. They really do feel superior because they are grounded in the idea that they are conservative Christians and that's a force for good. Politics is how they enact that goodness, but they really do think that their religion is the grounding they need to do all the horrible, terroristic bullshit that they're pulling off in the political realm. And going to church makes them feel like they're doing something righteous. So I don't know, but I'll tell you what, it's the extremist churches that seem to be growing. It's not the moderate ones, the ones that talk about, hey, Jesus said help the poor. Those are the ones that are losing ground. So it's these mega churches that are basically preaching Republican policies and nothing about Jesus that are gaining ground in culture. So are they going to start advocating to release that Epstein list, or are the right-wing evangelicals no longer in favor of that since their pumpkin messiah is implicated in that? Southern Baptists as a whole have not done anything different than run-of-the-mill Republican commentators to push for the Epstein stuff. Like, as soon as Donald Trump told them back off, they all started saying, well, I guess this part doesn't matter. Like, even this very easy moral issue, they're like, well, I guess we were wrong about that. Let's pretend it never happened. But no, it's not like Southern Baptists by and large are demanding it get released. Even elected Republicans are like, let's just move away from this. Let's pretend it never happened. And if anyone asks about it, we'll just treat it as a distraction. Dusty Devers sounds like he could co-star with Brent Leatherwood. Yeah, and Ryan Walters would watch it. I know what I said in the last video, but too bad. The Leatherwood Bible definitely has sticky pages, just like the Trump Bible. Yeah, very much so. All right, I'm moving to another story. Give me a second here. Gotta get rid of 100 tabs. Okay. All right. This is a very disturbing story. And I think I first talked about this a year or two ago, but there's been an update that's kind of good news. And I wanted to share that with you. But I'm going to go through this because, again, very disturbing story. So in 2011, there was a man in Arizona. His name is Paul Adams. And he confessed to his Mormon bishop, whose name is John Herod, that he was doing something very, very disturbing to his 5-year-old daughter. And I don't want to say it on here, but the answer is yeah. So he confessed that to his Mormon bishop. And so what did the bishop do when he heard this confession? The Mormon church has a helpline that bishops are supposed to call when they are wondering what they're supposed to do. And it's basically staffed by lawyers who work for the Mormon church. And the answer is always, don't do anything that's going to hurt the church. There's a lot of articles written about the helpline. But this guy, John Herod, he calls the helpline and he was told, keep that information to yourself. And don't tell police and don't tell local child welfare officials. Just don't do anything about it. So John Herod, the bishop, he didn't tell law enforcement, but even he seemed to be like, well, what can I do then to put a stop to this? And he was trying to figure out what to do, but he did not tell law enforcement. Well, guess what happened shortly after that? Here's an article from Arizona Central around that time. The man continued to hurt his daughter. Oh, wait. And later, after her birth in 2015, his infant daughter. Not only did he keep attacking his own daughter, sexually attacking his own daughter, he had another baby and then started going after her. And then it gets worse. He made videos of the encounters and posted them on adult websites, which were eventually discovered by Interpol, reported to his employer, US Customs and Border Protection, and led to criminal charges. So the only reason this guy actually got caught is because when he was uploading videos of this horrible stuff he was doing on some website, secular authorities saw what he did, traced it back to him, and arrested this guy. Meanwhile, the Mormon bishop knew about all this before it got even worse, and did absolutely nothing. So Paul Adams, the guy who we're talking about here, he was arrested in 2017. I will tell you that his children, and he had like 5 or 6 children altogether, they were eventually adopted by different families. So like the kids were finally away from their parents, biological parents. They were put in better hands. The wife, Paul Adams's wife, apparently knew about all this, and she was also arrested, and she was indicted on 12 criminal counts. She pleaded guilty. She was told to spend 2.5 years in prison, which she did, and she was released in 2020. Paul Adams was indicted on 11 counts of child sexual abuse, but while he was awaiting trial in 2017, he decided to Epstein himself in the prison. So he's no longer with us. So that's the story of Paul Adams. So here's where we get to a different part of this story. In 2021, those children of his, they are somewhat grown up, a little more than they were back in the day. And 3 of the children of Paul Adams decided to sue the Mormon church. Basically, they said you allowed the abuse to continue even though you had knowledge that could have stopped it. And in fact, their attorney, the kid's attorney, her name is Lynn Cadigan. Let me see if I could pull this up here. Yeah, this is what she said at the time. If I can find this. Oh, I don't have it in front of me. But basically what she said is that this case involves horrible sexual, physical, and emotional abuse of children between the ages of 6 weeks and 12 years old that went on for 7 years. She said the Mormon church leaders knew about the abuse, and yet no one reported these crimes to the authorities. The Mormon church leaders gave guidance and care to these children for 7 years, sat next to them in church, and allowed these vicious crimes to continue. So these kids sued the church. And then guess what happened in 2023? This is the article. I think this is the last time I talked about this story. Court cites clergy penitent privilege in dismissing child sex abuse lawsuit against Mormon church. Basically, a court said, well, Paul Adams told the bishop what he was doing, but it was like a Catholic confession. It's supposed to be a secret, so we can't hold the church accountable for not spilling that secret and telling law enforcement what he did. The same rule that we always talk about on this channel that applies to Catholic priests in a confession booth, they said it's the same thing when a Mormon guy admits something to his bishop. That's a confession. He has a right to think it's secret, and the Mormon bishop has no legal obligation to tell anyone what someone said to him. So we're tossing this lawsuit out. And what did that lawyer for the children say when this happened? This is what she said at the time. Lynn Cadigan, an attorney representing the Adams children who filed the lawsuit, said she will appeal the ruling. How do you explain to young victims that a rapist's religious beliefs are more important than their right to be free from rape? She asked. Cadigan also said the ruling, if allowed to stand, would completely eviscerate the state's child protection law. And what did the church say about all this? We're pleased with the decision granting judgment for the church and its clergy and dismissing the plaintiff's claims. Contrary to some news reports and exaggerated allegations, the court found that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and its clergy handled this matter consistent with Arizona law, which is a long way of saying we don't care about the children. You can't get us. We did everything we're allowed to do because we're a religion. And if the kids get hurt, oh, well, that's on you. Shouldn't have looked so sexy in those diapers. Like, that's the church's position when this lawsuit was tossed out of court. It is so heartless and such a dickish statement to make. So that's where we were at in 2023. Honestly, I had not thought much about this case since that time, even though I knew that lawyer said she was going to appeal this ruling. But guess what has just happened now after all of this? That judge, I should say, if there's, let me see if there's anything else here. No. I will just say this is like Exhibit A for why confessions should not be exempt from laws that are meant to protect children. Those mandated reporter laws, like if an adult in a position of power, like a teacher or a social worker, finds out that some child is being abused, they are legally obligated to report that to law enforcement. But religious leaders, in the act of confession, they are exempt from that rule. And they're excited about that. They would rather keep the secret of a child sex predator than protect the kids who are actively getting hurt. And that makes them happy too. So anyway, Arizona, they have this law in place. I've already made videos about how in Washington state, they just passed a law saying priests cannot get away with keeping this sort of stuff a secret. And both the Catholic Church and the Trump government have filed a lawsuit to overturn that law. We're still waiting on that decision, but that is happening right now. Anyway, I will jump ahead a little bit to just say that there are 33 states that exempt clergy from laws that require professionals to report this abuse. 33 states have this priest loophole in their law books. And there's lobbying by the Catholic Church and the Mormon Church and Jehovah's Witnesses to make sure it stays that way. Okay, so why am I talking about this today? Because all of this happened in 2023. Because last week, they did appeal that case. That lawyer for the kids, she did appeal that decision. And last week, we got a response. The Arizona Court of Appeals issued their ruling on this case. And this is kind of incredible. Look at this. Jane Doe 1, 2, and John Doe, the two girls and a boy, and they're suing the corporation of the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is a ruling they made on July 29th, 2025. And so what did they say in this lawsuit? Basically, the appellate court, 3 judges unanimously said, hey, judge who dismissed this case earlier, there are a lot of things you did not consider when you were going through this case. And so we're undoing your ruling. It's off the books. And we're going to make you take another look at this case because there's a lot of stuff you need to explain. They're not saying the judge has to rule one way or the other, but they're saying there's a lot of factors you did not correctly consider. So for example, one of the things they pointed out is that after Paul Adams made this confession to the bishop, I told you that the bishop called the helpline and they're like, don't do anything. And the bishop's like, well, I got to do something to try to put a stop to this. What can I do? He said, hey, Paul Adams, what you just said to me about what you do to your daughter, that is bad. I'm going to make your wife come in with me and we're going to meet as the 3 of us. And you're going to tell your wife what you've been up to. And the bishop, I think, thought if he tells his wife what he's doing, maybe she can stop him from doing it. And then I haven't broken my vows as a bishop, but the child's going to be safe. I think best case scenario, that's what the priest thought he was doing. But the thing is, as soon as Paul Adams told his wife what he was doing, are we still doing a confessional at this point? And this is what the judges said at the appellate court. Look at this. One thing you got to consider, Paul repeated his confession to his wife. I don't know how you pronounce it, Lisa. But they said the children contend the trial court erred when they said that also counts as a confession. They allege that Paul impliedly and expressly waived the privilege when he told his wife what he did. So now that is admissible evidence. Most notably, they claim that Paul Adams repeating his confession in his wife's presence amounted to a waiver, which required the bishop to report it to law enforcement. So at that point, Paul Adams is no longer confessing to the bishop. He's confessing to his wife. The bishop's just in the room overhearing it. And now he is a mandated reporter. He should have had to confess it. And these judges said, yeah, how come you didn't think about that one, judge? So that's an interesting thing that they pointed out. Now, the church's argument to this is that the rules of secrecy of confession, that still applies when you are talking to couples. And also the church said, who cares what the rules are? The bishop believed he had a religious duty of confidentiality. He thought it had to be confidential. So you can't blame us for not reporting this to law enforcement. That is the church's position on what I just told you. But despite all of that, this is what the judges said about that. Let me make sure I'm finding it here. This is what they said. A reasonable fact finder could also conclude Paul's confession to his wife Lisa amounted to a waiver of the clergy penitent privilege. So you got to take that into consideration. So that is a big freaking deal. Here's another thing. The lawsuit also said that Paul Adams confessed to his crimes during a disciplinary meeting. Because guess what? The Mormon church is like, we may have to kick you out of the Mormon church because we think all this molesting is making us look bad. So he confessed to what he did to like a panel of people who are going to decide his fate. But is that a confession? And the lawsuit said, no, that's not a confession. This is just a guy telling these other Mormons what he did. They should have to report it to law enforcement. They're not even clergy members on the disciplinary panel. And the church said, well, who cares if they're not clergy? Disciplinary meetings are there to provide spiritual guidance, so it counts as a confession. And the judges said, come on now, the presence of people who are not clergy members at that disciplinary hearing, that ought to count for something, right? This is what they said. Look at number 30, paragraph 30. During Paul's first excommunication proceeding, he was asked to confess or allow his confession to be heard before the council, but he refused to do it. At the later proceeding, blah, 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 Paul chose to confess his abuse before the council. A jury could reasonably infer that Paul's actions in that later proceeding voluntarily waived the clergy penitent privilege. So if we're thinking about that, shouldn't the church have reported it? This judge should have considered that. That's amazing. And then the last thing, and this is kind of amazing, the Mormon church actually has a rule book for bishops. And let me show you what it says about confession and confidentiality. I'm showing you the Mormon guidebook, the handbook. And it has a section on confidentiality. And if I scroll down here, look at this section right here. In only one situation should a bishop or stake president disclose confidential information without first seeking such guidance. And that is when disclosure is necessary to prevent life-threatening harm or serious injury, and there is not time to seek guidance. So for example, if someone confesses to a Mormon bishop, I'm going to murder somebody right now after this, then yeah, the Mormon bishop can right away tell law enforcement to try to put a stop to it to prevent that from happening. The Mormon church is saying that is fine. In such cases, the duty to protect others is more important than the duty of confidentiality. Leaders should contact civil authorities immediately. I gotta say, that actually sounds like a very sensible rule. And the lawsuit filed by the children said, how come the church's own rule book doesn't count for something? Because the rule book says that the bishop should have told law enforcement, because isn't what was happening to their own family members, isn't that serious injury? Shouldn't that have counted? And the judges said the appellate court said the judge who ruled on this earlier and dismissed the case, he didn't even mention the guidebook. And they wrote, I want to make sure I can show this to you here. In other words, they wrote, here we go, number 34. In other words, there is a genuine issue whether it was reasonable and necessary for church defendants to withhold reporting the child's abuse. Yeah, if the church is saying we had to keep it a secret, according to your own guidebook, no, you didn't. So this appellate court basically tossed out that earlier ruling that was in favor of the Mormon church, and they told that earlier judge, try again and keep in mind this stuff we are talking about, because the alternative is that the judge rules in a certain way, it goes up to the appellate court, and they say, no, everything here is wrong. We're just undoing what you did. And right now what they're saying is, don't make us do that. You take another stab at this, but you got to keep this stuff in mind. And by the way, we've already written all this, so you know where our minds are at. So wink, wink, try again. And one of the things that came out after all this, guess what the lawyers said after this ruling? You're going to enjoy this. A Tucson-based attorney for the victims, Lynn Cadigan, praised the decision. This renews my faith in the justice system, which is an unbelievable thing. I mean, I feel happy for her, even though this is a horrible situation. So the Mormon church says it's going to appeal this decision because of course they are, because they don't care about these children. They just want to prolong their suffering. They have made it so clear that their thirst for secrecy and self-preservation outweighs any moral obligation to protect children from abuse. So it is amazing to me that facing this unimaginable horror of years of abuse that was filmed and distributed by a confessed predator, the Mormon church responded not with humanity, not with accountability, but with like legalism and repeated attempts to just bury the truth. They weaponized confession as a shield for monsters like Paul Adams. Then they had the audacity to celebrate a legal loophole that let them off the hook. Like, they want nothing more than to protect predators. And now this appellate court says not so fast. So it doesn't just reopen this legal case. It actually cracks open this fortress that the Mormon church and so many other religious institutions have built around themselves. And here's the church saying, yeah, we're still going to be fighting it. They would rather take away the survivors' time and energy and hope than face any kind of moral or legal reckoning. So the Mormon church hasn't just failed its most vulnerable members, it is complicit in what they are going through. All right, where are we at with this? What questions do we have here for this story? Those poor kids not getting any justice. Not yet. They're starting to get some. I hope it stays that way. I don't even know how old these kids are now. Because if this stuff was happening in 2011, they're still kids today. I can't believe we're looking for technicalities to lock up child abusers. And the sad part is the technicalities may be what gets justice for these kids. They're only keeping it secret because it's a legal liability. It has nothing to do with confession. It has everything to do with money. This is just sickening beyond belief. And the amazing thing is the Mormon church has billions and billions of dollars, famously. Like, they are sucking up land. There are so many articles written about how much money they are storing in tithes. It's like tens of billions of dollars. And how much land they are buying up as investments for the future. They have money. It's not a money problem, even though, of course, wealthy organizations and individuals, like, they don't want to lose any of it. But it's not like this is going to decimate the church's bank account. Shouldn't the judge be investigated? You know, I had this conversation on my podcast the other day too. And look, if a judge is wrong, that unfortunately happens. I mean, you hope in a good system of justice that judge's ruling is overturned. That is what happened here so far. I don't think you can investigate a judge for just being an idiot. Um, Even though, listen, there are plenty of Trump judges out there who I don't think are really interested in the rule of law. They already have their conclusion and then they write their opinions to meet whatever result they want. That's how they work. They shouldn't be investigated for a bad ruling. There are plenty of reasons you should investigate bad judges, corrupt judges, for things like that. But a decision you don't like isn't one of them, as long as there's a system in place to overturn a bad ruling. You know what I mean? So I'm not even saying that judge needs to be investigated, but I am glad that finally that decision was overturned, because that doesn't always happen. Why can't they make a different judge do it instead? If you were unhappy with the judge's decision and you could just get a different judge, our entire legal system would be in chaos. So they roll the dice with these cases. You don't get to pick the judge doesn't get to pick the case. It is random in that sense. So unfortunately, that happens. You may know this. The Republicans, by and large, conservative groups, they file federal lawsuits in like one or two specific courts in Texas because there's only one federal judge who's even available to hear them, and it happens to be a Trump judge. So they always file these big lawsuits in that one dude's district for that reason specifically, because if they try to file a lawsuit anywhere else, they don't get to control who the judge might be that the case is assigned to. I hope this gets well publicized. Me too. I mean, this is a wild case. And I mean, I want Mormons to have to explain why they're defending a system that's on the wrong side of this issue. Oh, thank you for that super sticker, Alex. I appreciate that very much. And hey, we have a YouTube member as well. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for that donation. Devers, disgraces, Dusties everywhere. Thank you to the better Dusty for that comment. Okay, let me jump to a different story. Give me 1 second here. I got a bit of an update for you in this next one. Give me 1 second. I did not know I was going to do this story tonight. And then, like, right before I started filming this live stream, I'm like, no, I want to talk about this because this is making me mad. I talked about this a while ago. There is this book that is now released. It's called The War on Science. This right here is Lawrence Krauss. And you could see the subtitle here. 39 renowned scientists and scholars speak out about current threats to free speech, open inquiry, and the scientific process. They published this book called The War on Science. And again, I made a video about this months and months ago when Lawrence Krauss announced that he was putting together this book, because there was enough information out there to have thoughts about it. And I actually helped. If you are on YouTube right now, there's a wonderful video about this book from genetically modified skeptic, Drew McCoy. I wrote that video, the script for that video. He made a wonderful video about this book. You can watch that as well. But there's a reason I want to talk about this book today. But let me give you a backstory if you're not familiar with this book. The idea here is that this is a book full of essays from a bunch of contributors who are all talking about the war being waged on science. And the contributors include some people you all who are watching this may be familiar with: Richard Dawkins, Jerry Coyne, Peter Boghossian, Steven Pinker, Lawrence Krauss again. And if you were going to write a book about the war on science, what would you write about today? Is it how the Trump administration is firing scientists and rescinding grants that they gave and decimating all these schools along with the research grants they have given to them? And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Denying vaccines. What did he do this week? He said we're not going to fund the development of vaccines from Pfizer or Moderna in the future, mRNA vaccines. How about Republicans decimating funding for research, or Trump withdrawing from the climate agreement, or leaving the World Health Organization, or putting all these anti-vaxxers in charge of everything? All of this stuff is happening. And guess what? In this book from Lawrence Krauss, none of these people give a shit about any of that. Their concerns are, you know who's waging a war on science? It's all those progressives who are like, you know who we should give scholarships to? Black people. You know when we should fund, we should do research on things that maybe we don't understand the relevance of it just yet, but it feels like this is an interesting thing to research. And conservatives always pick apart their like published studies, like, look, they were studying gay rats or something, and it's stupid. It's like, yeah, but they were trying to get at something deeper to make a better understanding of humanity. And it's going to help us down the line. Just because you read a headline and you don't understand the study doesn't mean this whole research was useless. So this is what's been happening in the world of science. And so in this book, when you saw what was in this book, it became very clear that they were only talking about right-wing grievances and like agreeing with them and not talking about actual threats to the scientific establishment. Specifically in the book, because they released a table of contents a while ago, they have chapters on free speech and ideology and victimhood. They talk about ideological corruption of academic disciplines. They have a whole section on cancel culture. They have a section on DEI, and then another section on gender, race, ideology, science, and scholarship, and a section on what can be done about it. There was a wonderful article written this week on the website Science-Based Medicine by Dr. Jonathan Howard, because now the book has been published. It's out. Oh, I'm going to add one more thing. I'm going to reference this later on. When I made that video months ago about this stupid book, one of the criticisms I got was that I haven't read the book. How dare I have any thoughts about it when I haven't read it, even though the table of contents was out there and I knew exactly what this was going to be about. And there is an actual easy answer to this. These are not 39 brand new essays that they were publishing in this book. A lot of these essays are things these scholars wrote for right-wing websites over the past couple of years, like long think pieces that are really stupid. And so they were just packaging that into this book. So if I saw the table of contents, I could Google that article, I would find where they originally published it, and I could read the whole article for myself. So I'm not just mad about this book without having read it. I could read a lot of the essays that were going to be in it. So it was easy to criticize it for what it actually said and not just what I thought it said. But now the book is out. And on this website, Science-Based Medicine, Jonathan Howard did a really nice job picking it apart. And I just wanted to highlight a few of the things he said in here that I thought were really interesting after going through the table of contents. There's the genetically modified skeptics video about this stupid book. But look at this. Ensconced in their pundit fantasy world, these contributors had the luxury of pretending that the real threat to science came not from Trump and his minions, but rather from cancel culture, DEI, gender, and race. Krauss actually wrote a 2016 article worried about what the Trump administration would do. And he says, while Krauss's 2016 essay predicted the future, his current book was written as if the past 8 years never happened. And it should be titled Renowned Scientists and Scholars Who Were in a Coma. The war on science is best thought of as a work of science fiction, dispatches from a parallel universe where MAGA doesn't exist, wokeism is all powerful, and science was obliterated by DEI and trans people. It is a complete inversion of what's actually happening. That is so well said and it's so accurate. And then I would add, it's not just that these renowned scientists and scholars created a fantasy world. Their imaginations provided fuel and ammunition to the people who are currently taking a wrecking ball to things in the real world. Predictably, these scientists and scholars were happy to lend their legitimacy to this feigned victimhood. Jordan Peterson is a contributor to this stupid book. Jordan Peterson and Gad Saad recorded podcasts with future Trump officials about silencing the opposition about academic freedom. Now that they are in power, these same Trump officials are leading the way, purging, censoring, and defunding scientists. So this is a point I did not make earlier, which is that it's not just that the Dawkins and Krauses and Coins. It's not just that they are focused on the wrong thing. They're focused on the thing that has nothing to do with where the real problem is at. Like, it's not just that they're stupid, it's that they're lending all the ammo that the right wing needs to sow mindless doubt about vaccines and research in itself. Like, why are we trying to help Trump cultists prop up an anti-science administration? Again, if you were writing a book called The War on Science written in 2025, how do you ignore what the Trump administration is doing? At the very least, there needs to be something on the front page, on the cover of the book that says, look, these are, in terms of priority about what's hurting science, these are items like 1000 through 1039. And by the way, they wouldn't even belong on that list, but that would at least make a little more sense, but they didn't do any of that. There's another thing that is also interesting. So Jerry Coyne, who has written, by the way, some very good books on evolution, he's a contributor to this. He's also a right-wing crank now who only writes about like his favorite right-wing websites and the articles they publish and how much he really doesn't understand or like trans people. It's all he writes about. But he was promoting this particular book that he contributed to. And I think he's also heard from critics like me. He says like 39 essays about how science is being corrupted by the left. Now I know what you're going to say. The 39 chapters in the book below, find it here on Amazon, deal exclusively with threats to science from the left. But as we all know, at the moment, the threats to science from the right, the Trump administration, are far more serious. And look what he says. This is back in his voice. In the short run, that may be the case. But in the long run, well, who knows? Yeah, because hiring a black person or giving money to, minority groups, that's really what's going to kill science in the long term. I mean, we won't have research in the long term because we just cut off all the funding for it. But, in the long term, trans people might ruin science. This fucking idiot. Oh my God. So think of it as a bunch of scientists and other academics analyzing how our trade is being hurt by progressives. And at the time we submitted our manuscripts to editor Lawrence Krauss, who added a nice introduction, Trump hadn't yet started slicing federal grant money from bad universities. You guys, these are the smartest men in the scientific establishment. How would they possibly know 5 or 6 months ago when they submitted these manuscripts that Trump would be bad? I mean, they only had the past 10 years of Trump being a dictator to know anything. How could you be this dumb? Again, I expect Republicans to be this dumb, but when you're someone like Jerry Coyne or Richard Dawkins, who has built an entire career on the foundation that I'm smarter than the rest of you, I understand stuff better than the rest of you, I can explain it better than the rest of you, and you should come to me because I'm a champion critical thinker. And these guys are like, how are we going to know Trump was going to do mean things to science? We've never heard of Project 2025, where it laid out how they were going to decimate science. Maybe if they had listened to people like me who clearly knew all this was happening, they would be in a better position. But what do I know? By the way, in that same Coyne blog, my favorite thing about it, yeah, there he is posting his book. By the way, I know I said this in the previous video. Lawrence Krauss has defended Jeffrey Epstein. You can look that up. It's not a good look. It's a horrible quotation. It was after Epstein was found to have done some horrible things. Lawrence Krauss was still defending him. You go look it up. I mentioned it in the previous video. Anyway, back to this Coyne post. After he's promoting this book, I get a mention in here. I'm so happy. Let's scroll down past the table of contents. Oh, look at this. As a reader noted, and I predicted, the great benighted, I don't get it, which includes the hateful, friendly atheist, has gone after the book before it was even issued. I very strongly doubt that the hateful atheist even read the book before he went after it. So, ignorance. I repeat, the table of contents was published months ago, and almost all of these essays were already online. So I did read the essays that were online. And guess what? They were also stupid back then. So just, just dumb. Jerry Coyne, dumb. Was there anything else I wanted to share with you about this? There is. Oh, let's see. Lawrence Krauss just wrote an article like now, like a couple weeks ago, about Trump's war on science, which is like, okay, great. That's interesting. Look at this. First of all, he wrote it for Quillette, which is one of those right wing anti establishment websites. But okay, an article on Trump's war on science. Very good. Look at what Dawkins says. Pity, this superb essay is too late for our book, The War on Science. Admittedly, universities have promoted idiotic woke nonsense, gender studies, etc. But backlash cutting science budgets is sheer spite and even more idiotic. Science makes America great. I've said enough about Richard Dawkins going after wokeness and trans people and gender stuff. But if you know that what this administration doing is even more idiotic, why would you contribute to a book that doesn't focus on that? Why would you spend all your time going after the thing you freely admit is a less of a threat to the scientific establishment? And by the way, they weren't going to include this essay in the book because the book, not only is it a collection of right-wing diatribes written by all these canceled professors who are like a mixture of sexist and racist and all of that, it's published by a right-wing publisher. Pity this superb essay was too late for our book. It wasn't too late. And also, if you want to know what Lawrence Krauss is up to promote this book, just look at this tweet. I did the Federalist podcast to talk about the war on science. Lawrence Krauss talks about his right-wing book on a right-wing podcast, and then they're mad that critics are going after him as if he's on the right. Just a bunch of idiots. I don't know what else I want to say about this book. It's a dumb book. You can read it online for free. All the essays are right there. But again, if this is what the most popular names in science communication are doing, what the hell is wrong with these people? I want to go back really quickly to that science-based medicine article because this guy went after Coyne too. Predictably, Coyne doesn't blame himself for being late to recognize Trump's threat. Rather, he says Trump's actions were too late for the book. Dawkins similarly lamented that Krauss's anti-Trump essay was too late to absolve themselves of their blindness to the obvious. These renowned scientists and scholars act as if Trump's attack on science was some freakish, unpredictable natural disaster. How were they supposed to know? Jesus Christ. Of course, reality wasn't too late for their book. Anyway, really wonderful article. What was this other bit? Many renowned scientists and scholars, some of whom should have been valuable allies, were blind to the real danger until it was too late. While many of us warned about the threat to science, they rolled out the red carpet to its attackers, giving them intellectual cover and legitimacy. They did this in the name of reason, free speech, and skepticism, all to combat pronouns and gender studies, which were supposedly existential threats to the entire scientific enterprise. I love it. That's such a great encapsulation of what they are dealing with. Kudos to Dr. Jonathan Howard for that excellent article. I'll stop there. It's a dumb book. Don't read it. Don't waste your time. But if you do, you will find out everything I just said is accurate. What do we got here? Look, they don't really want to cut all the funding that keeps everything in society progressing. But how else are they going to give their billionaire buddies all those tax breaks? Sheesh. I know they don't want to hurt Harvard and all those schools that, the right wing has waged a war on elite universities for decades, even though they all graduated from those schools. But they know that they got to say those schools are the problem with society. So now they're just extorting them for ransom money until they pay up. And none of this is good for science. All the best research tends to happen at these universities. So when you're taking money away from these schools, it makes it harder to do research that helps all of us. Like, to go after gender studies instead of all the things the Trump administration is doing, how blind do you have to be to what is actually going on? Everyone that was part of that book, I have no respect for them. And listen, I only mentioned a few of them. There are so many more people on that list you should not have respect for. But listen, anytime you're writing a book and Jordan Peterson is one of the contributors, you have made a mistake with your life. What are you doing? Like, that should have been right there. Like, oh, he's writing for this book? Don't publish my essay. Like, don't put it in the book. I don't want to be part of this. Oh man, I should be picking these apart as well. Those of us with academic literacy need to speak out more, myself included. I appreciate that, and yes, I hope anyone who has academic literacy, or even I don't care if you have a degree or not, like if you have an interest in science, you can and should speak out against this bullshit. Whether it's this stupid Lawrence Krauss book or everything the Trump administration is doing, there's no shortage of things you could be mad about. You should be mad about something, and you should make everyone else also be mad about it. This is therapy for me. Me trying to get you to be mad about the same things I'm mad about, because I promise you no one in my circles really cares about any of this, but I'm trying. Oh, thank you for that donation. Enjoying the news roundup from my hotel in Sarnia. Baja Con will miss you. I love Baja Con that is going on this weekend. They have a great lineup in Sarnia, Ontario. I hope I am back there next year. Tell them to bring me back. I love it there, but it's a good group. I hope you enjoy yourself. All right, let me jump to a different story. One moment here. Oh, it feels so good to X out of all these Lawrence Krauss tabs. Seriously, if you haven't experienced this, go open up Lawrence Krauss's Twitter account and then X out of it. You'll feel better. Okay. All right, here's an update for you that I think you're going to appreciate. You may recall that a bunch of red states are trying to pass these laws to put the 10 Commandments in every public school or public school classroom. Just to remind you, like, they did it in Louisiana. They passed a law in Louisiana to put up the 10 Commandments in every classroom. A federal judge struck that down last November. And in June, an appellate court upheld that decision. So that Louisiana law is not going into effect this month when school is back in session. That's great news. Arkansas then passed a bill to basically do the same thing. And then Texas passed a bill to do the exact same thing. And lawsuits have been filed in both of those states. And just to give you a reminder of what they did in Arkansas, their bill, Act 573, it requires all public buildings to put up a poster reading "In God We Trust," and it requires all public buildings and I think classrooms to put up the 10 Commandments. And they specifically said, this is what the 10 Commandments poster has to say. It has to be this large, etc. It's the King James Version. And their argument is that this isn't about shoving religion in schools. This is about American history, right? All of this is what the founding fathers would have wanted, because the Declaration and the Constitution, it's all Christian. They're making all that up, but that is what their argument was when passing this. So I told you in Louisiana, they passed a similar law and it got struck down. The people who filed the lawsuit against the Louisiana law, it included Americans United for Separation of Church and State, the ACLU, the Freedom from Religion Foundation. That was the same group that filed the lawsuit in Arkansas to strike that one down. And they argued in their lawsuit that permanently posting the 10 Commandments in every classroom and library, it unconstitutionally pressures students into religious observance, veneration, and adoption of the state's favored religious scripture. It also sends this harmful and religiously divisive message that if you don't subscribe to the 10 Commandments, you are not part of the right religion, right? That's basically what they said in their lawsuit. They also said in the lawsuit that there was a Supreme Court case about the 10 Commandments, like decades and decades ago. It's called Stone versus Graham. And basically, Kentucky passed a virtually identical law to put the Ten Commandments up in public spaces. And the Supreme Court said that is illegal. And they said the Supreme Court, today's Supreme Court, has not overturned that. So you don't even have to do any work, judges. It's the same law. Therefore, it's still illegal. They also said that in both the Stone Supreme Court case, this lawsuit that they filed in Arkansas, they said the Stone case and the Louisiana law, when they said you got to put up the Ten Commandments, both of those laws said they have to put up a disclaimer as well next to the poster, a context statement that basically says this is about the historical relevance of the Ten Commandments. Guess what? In Arkansas, they didn't even bother to say the Ten Commandments posters needed a disclaimer next to it. So if those other places, the Stone case, the Louisiana law, if those are illegal, well, then the Arkansas law is definitely illegal. And what they were saying is that by mandating the Ten Commandments in the classrooms, the state is effectively telling kids which religions count and which ones don't. And they are sending a message that kids from non-Christian families or the wrong kind of Christian families are second-class citizens. So that Arkansas law was set to go into effect on August 5th, like this week as we are making this. And a lot of the public schools in Arkansas open up like August 12th, next week, a week later. So really, they asked the court, hey, look, we know it takes a while for the courts to issue a ruling on this stuff, but school's starting up. So like, can you get on this quickly? And this week, a federal judge, his name is Timothy Brooks. He is an Obama appointee. He issued a preliminary injunction basically saying, look, I haven't weighed in on this. This isn't my final decision, but school's starting, so I got to say something right now. And for now, this law does not look good. And that's great news. But I want to show you some of the stuff he said here because it's kind of amazing what he said. Look at this decision from this judge. 45 years ago, he's talking about the Stone versus Graham case, the Supreme Court struck down a Ten Commandments law nearly identical to the one the Arkansas General Assembly passed earlier this year. That precedent remains binding on this court and renders Arkansas Act 573 plainly unconstitutional. Look at this. Why would Arkansas pass an obviously unconstitutional law? Most likely because the state is part of a coordinated strategy among several states to inject Christian religious doctrine into public school classrooms. Oh my God, it's like this guy reads my website. These states view the past decade of rulings by the Supreme Court on religious displays in public spaces as a signal that the court would be open to revisiting its precedent on religious displays in the public school context. Yeah, that's exactly what this is all about. And this judge gets it. And so what this judge says is, look, the Louisiana law has already been struck down, and the Texas law is already subject to another lawsuit. And the judge said, look, the Supreme Court could theoretically reverse all of these rulings. But he said, for now, and I want to show this right here. Where did it go? As for Act 573, the court's duty here is to explain in direct and simple terms why the law is unconstitutional under any legal test and award appropriate relief. This is ominous. He says the rest is beyond its control. And what he is saying there is the Supreme Court could easily say the Ten Commandments are a part of American history, so they're legal everywhere. Now you could totally put them up in classrooms. But until they do that, we can just pretend the rule of law still exists. And under precedent and under previous cases, this Arkansas law is unconstitutional. So, yay, that is a remarkable ruling. And some of the things, I want to show you some of the things that this judge says, because he really does knock down every argument that the Arkansas lawmakers and lawyers were trying to say. Look at this. The school districts and the state tried to dismiss this complaint on the grounds that their claims of imminent injury are merely speculative or hypothetical. And what that means is the lawyers for the state were saying these people, these families, they cannot sue over the 10 Commandments law because their kids haven't gone to school yet and they haven't seen any 10 Commandments posters. So, you guys, come on, you can't sue us yet. You got to let us put up the posters, and then you could say you're offended and you could sue us, but you can't do it yet. But just like the last story I did, the table of contents is already out there. We know what the law says. We know what the 10 Commandments posters are going to look like. So this isn't hypothetical anymore. We know exactly what they're going to go up against. And that's what the judge said. The judge said Arkansas classrooms are going to have all the money they need to purchase these posters. And everyone knows what the posters will say since it was literally written in the bill. And it doesn't matter, the judge said, if there's additional stuff around the posters, because the commandments themselves are the problem here. Look at what this judge said. I want to show you this. Here we go. The displays will substantially burden the religious exercise by usurping their parental authority, blah, blah, blah. It'll forcibly subject their children to religious doctrine and beliefs. It'll send a message to their children that they do not belong in their own school community and religiously coerce their children by pressuring them to adopt this stuff. And I loved this one other thing I wanted to show you. Check this out. When you're reading these decisions, you know that these judges are like, I got to put all my legal arguments up here. But sometimes they save the best material for the footnotes. And if you look at this footnote, this is amazing. Because I don't know how many people read this footnote. The state offers no examples of mitigating context either. Like, what posters are you going to put around the 10 Commandments that's going to make any of this better? Perhaps the state imagines that in a math classroom, the surrounding context of equations would be mitigating, or in a French classroom, photographs of the Eiffel Tower and French greetings would be mitigating. Such speculation is pointless. Further, it is telling that the state's asserted secular purpose for displaying the 10 Commandments is to teach school children about the historical significance of the 10 Commandments to our nation's history, legal system, and education. Yet, the state has never mandated the display of any foundational secular documents of unquestionable importance to our nation's heritage, such as the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. Yeah, those historic documents don't need to be displayed. The only items Arkansas believes a child must see every day in school to convey a proper sense of the nation's rich history are a poster with the words "In God We Trust" and a poster of the 10 Commandments. Oh my God, I love this judge. He's calling out their bullshit. It is unbelievable. The other thing about this decision that I really enjoyed is that the judge said that the plaintiffs, the families, the church-state separation groups, they had an expert witness, Dr. Stephen Green, who basically testified in front of the judge that the 10 Commandments have nothing to do with U.S. history. Green said that the founding fathers supported church-state separation, that the Constitution and Declaration of Independence were not based on the 10 Commandments, and that there is no long-standing historical practice of putting the 10 Commandments in public schools. And then to counter that, what did he say here? This is what the judge said about the state's response to all that. Look at the last two lines here. Suffice it to say that the only credible evidence of record in this case that explains the relevant historical practices was supplied by Dr. Green. Like, the state didn't even have a pretend doctor come up and say, I'm an expert in this stuff. And yeah, the founding fathers were totally into Jesus. They didn't even bother wasting anyone's time with that. So there was one expert in this case, and the one expert said everything Arkansas is doing is bullshit. Unbelievable. The judge also said it was intellectually dishonest to say that these were passive displays and kids could just ignore them. And check out this sarcasm in this ruling. The judge says, right at the top of your screen here, after all, the state surely expects that the commandments will actually be read by students. So don't tell me that they could just ignore it if they want to. Love that. So the bottom line is the plaintiffs have a strong case. The judge is openly saying all of this. Like the judge is basically saying this is a good case. But, and this is the frustrating thing. If I go to the very end of this judge's ruling, after he says all of this, this is where it got annoying. And this is the only thing I didn't like about his ruling. This is the last page of his decision. He said, where did this go? Conclusion. It is ordered that this preliminary injunction is granted. So all these public spaces, public schools, public places, etc., he says, they cannot comply with Act 573 by displaying the Ten Commandments in public elementary and secondary schools. But look at this. He says that only applies in these 4 school districts: Fayetteville, Springdale, Bentonville, and I don't know how to pronounce the last one, Siloam. So this judge says everything this law says is unconstitutional. But for now, because this is an emergency motion that he's trying to file right away before school starts, he says, I'm only applying it to the districts where the students and their families who are suing attend. That's it. That's 4 school districts out of 237 in the state. Now, I will say a couple of those, Fayetteville, Bentonville, Springdale, those are some of the largest districts in Arkansas, so that's a plus. But it's only those 4 districts. Everyone else, when school starts up next week, for now, they have to put up posters of the Ten Commandments. And now we have to wait for the same judge to issue his final ruling that seems to be saying this law is unconstitutional, and that applies across the state, but he hasn't done that yet. I hope it comes soon, but the writing is on the wall. This judge is not buying what the state did. For what it's worth, the Arkansas Attorney General, his name is Tim Griffin, he said, I am reviewing the court's order and assessing our legal options. But the problem is, the legal options are you could fight this, but it looks like none of the judges are buying any of this. Not at the district level, not at the appellate level, so it doesn't look like that's going to go anywhere. We'll see what happens. I mean, this is not just a setback for Arkansas Republicans. This is a devastating exposure of their sectarian religious agenda. I mean, if this case proves anything, it's that we need more parents willing to fight back against this. The ones who did represented those school districts. If we had more parents willing to put their name on a lawsuit like this, maybe it applies to other places as well. I mean, more people need to decide whether they want schools that educate their kids or churches that just masquerade as classrooms. But some good news for now. So yay. I'll stop there and take questions before I move on. What do we got here? Maybe he does read your website. You say things good. There's no way he reads my website, but I do like the thought. And maybe, I mean, what I'm saying, I learn a lot of this stuff by reading these lawsuits and what the plaintiffs have argued, because they're making the actual legal case for why you can't have the Ten Commandments in the classroom. And I'm glad to see a judge actually take those arguments seriously and not just dismiss them like some right-wing judges would. I can tell them where they can put the Ten Commandments. They won't like it, though. That's a big thing to shove up there. But maybe one at a time? Sure, why not? Has there ever been a more insecure group of people than who? Conservative Christians? No. Republicans? No. I don't even know what we're talking about, but I can make a lot of guesses. All right, jumping to another story. Give me a second here. All right. Oh, okay. Let's talk about West Point. If you're familiar with West Point, it's the military academy, one of the very prestigious military academies. And like all military academies and military bases, they have chapels. They have places where people there can worship, because that's fine, because there are soldiers who are religious and they want to worship. I have no problem with that. And in the West Point Cadet Chapel, They have Bibles in the chapel. That's not weird at all. But they recently made a decision that is totally unnecessary and unwanted. And here's the backstory here. The US military is supposed to be secular and nonpartisan. It's supposed to be. And you can guess why it should be that way, because you have a volunteer army that is bringing together people from very different walks of life, very different religious backgrounds, political backgrounds, social backgrounds, even though they're mostly lower income. But the last thing you want to do is create more division. So they're not supposed, even more so than like our federal government or the state government, they're not supposed to pretend that they have some sort of religious mission, that they're on a Christian crusade here. So it's been very disturbing watching the Trump administration promote Christian nationalism through all these capacities. Whether it's Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary, he delivered a Jesus Pact commencement address to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. I made a video about that weeks ago. Or you have Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who's praising the Crusades and has weird religious tattoos on. So I don't have a problem with West Point or anywhere else having a chapel, having a place for Christians to go and worship, because guess what? Those places always have places for others. They have places where Muslims can pray. They have places for smaller religious groups to be as well. Now, one thing that is wrong with the military is they have no humanist chaplains. They offer chaplains to people who want to talk to a religious leader because they're struggling with stuff. And that's a good thing. I like that the military has that available to people. But for whatever reason, the military has not said yes to like humanist chaplains in the military. That's a problem. But by and large, the military is supposed to play it secular. So what did they do at West Point? Sometime last year, presumably under the Biden administration, the West Point Cadet Chapel, the Bibles in them were redesigned to remove. I'll show you a picture of this Bible that they had there. This is the Bible they had in the chapels at West Point. And you could see at the very bottom, it says United States Military Academy, West Point, New York. Basically, it's our property, and we want to make sure these stay on our campus. But look what's above it. It's like the seal for West Point. If I zoom in, it says duty, honor, country, West Point, U.S. Military Academy, the date that it was founded. I mean, at this point, putting this logo on the cover of the Bible suggests that the military academy and the Bible are intertwined. Not just that it's the property of West Point, like your local library puts a stamp inside of a book that says, this is our book in case someone steals it. This is saying, like, here's our stamp of approval on this Bible. So sometime last year, they decided that future printings of those Bibles, they will not have that insignia on it. And this pissed off a bunch of conservative Christian groups. The right-wing legal group Judicial Watch, they filed a FOIA request to try to get more information on why this change was made. They never heard back. So this past June, they filed a lawsuit saying, hey, tell us why. We're suing you because you're not responding to our complaint here. And now, recently, the Army responded. And they could have said, hey, look, the Bible is available for anybody who wants them. We're not removing them altogether. So who cares what's on the cover? They did not do that. Instead, they caved under the slightest of pressure. And this is the headline that was on Fox right here. Decision to remove West Point crest from chapel Bibles reversed by Secretary of the Army. They're undoing it. They're putting the logo back. And this is what the Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll, said. Since the founding of West Point and before, generations of cadets, officers, and soldiers have drawn strength and inspiration from God's word. The decision to remove the Academy's historic crest from the Bibles in the Cadet Chapel is yet another example of the previous administration pushing far left politics into our military institutions. I am directing West Point to reverse this decision immediately and restore this important symbol of duty, honor, country. I just want to note, What is the example of the previous administration pushing far left politics? They said, hey, remove the logo from the Bible, even though you're going to have the Bible in the Christian chapel that we built on our military base. That is their best example of far left politics. This is how you know they are bullshitting their way through all of this. But the military is putting it back on. And then what did Judicial Watch say about this decision? Judicial Watch's heavy lifting gets results, said Tom Fitton. Goes to show again how our lawsuits exposing corruption can fix corruption. It's not corruption. They removed the logo for good reason, I think, and now they're putting it back. The U.S. Army and West Point can't go wrong in honoring God. Yes, they can. They very much can, because the U.S. Army and West Point do not have a religion. They're not supposed to honor God. They should give people space to worship however it is they want to worship, or not worship at all. But it is not the military's duty to tell people, yeah, this is the God that we believe in over here. That's why this is a problem. I could care less what they have on their Bible, but they should not have this insinuation that there is a religion in the military that's like the official one. So it's not far left politics. It's the army went from catering to Christians 100% of the time to 99% of the time, and these people flipped out. If your life is better because the West Point crest is now on the cover of a book you probably already have a copy of and can always access for free on the internet, you have very little to complain about anything. And as far as I could tell, and I looked for this, the crest does not appear on the cover of like the Quran that they have available for whoever wants to read that. So there's no reason the army should be doing this. But Republicans today are so hell-bent on imposing Christian nationalism any way they can. And if that means turning the military into a vessel to spread their religious beliefs, they will gladly do it. I just want to tell you, what does this look like on the... What does it look like when crazy people are not running the government? In 2019, a private company was selling dog tags, like fake dog tags, like they had the military branches logos on one side and they had a Bible verse on the other side. And a group called the Military Religious Freedom Foundation filed complaints saying, hey, the Pentagon has a policy that says you cannot use trademarked logos of the military branches to promote religion or non-religion. You can't use the military's logo to promote your religion or non-religious beliefs. And the company was later forced to stop selling that bit of merchandise. And they filed a lawsuit. I don't know how that went. But the point is, this is what happens when you take it seriously. The military should not be used to promote your religion. And why? Because that unity is what the military needs to function, to make it stronger, to make it more inclusive of more Americans. I don't care if they have the book available. It's unwise for them to do anything more than that. Because again, there are atheists in foxholes. There are people who are non-Christian in the military in every branch. And to do this sends the symbol that those people are not worth it. Just like the military said today, if you're a trans person who has served in the military for like over 15 years, we're just not going to give you your pension that you are owed. Why? Because we don't like you. Because that's what the Republicans do when they're in power. I did ask the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. Their president is Mikey Weinstein. I asked him what he thought of this particular decision with the West Point Bibles. And this is what he told me. This is an abhorrent, wretched decision that only buttresses fundamentalist, Christian nationalist triumphalism and unconstitutional brutality. He loves a good soundbite. Anyway, what's the motto of West Point? Duty, honor, country. None of those things have a Christian prerequisite, and it should stay that way. But this is the Trump administration, and Republicans aren't going to stop them. So they're going to push their religious faith everywhere they can because they don't give a shit about unifying the country or unifying the military. All right, I'll stop there. What other questions we got here? Judicial Watch doesn't even have a lawyer employed there. Yeah, I think it's one of those right-wing groups that just pops in whenever it thinks it can fundraise off of these things, and this seemed like low-hanging fruit. If we can't remove the West Point crest from the Bibles, can we remove the Bible from West Point? It is funny, but I don't even want them to do it. I think they should function like hotels. Have the Bible and religious books available for anyone who requests them, because I think it's a good service if you want to have them available. But don't force them on everybody, and don't pretend like your place of business or your military academy is saying there's something right about this book. That should not be what the military is doing. By putting their stamp of approval on it, that's a mistake. By having it available for people in the chapel, that doesn't bother me one bit. All right, I got one last story for you, then I'll call it a night here. And this is one I have not posted about yet, but I think you will find it very interesting. So give me a second to pull this up here. Okay. So for years now, there has been a public school district in California where a majority of the board members on their school board have come from the same Christian megachurch, and they've been doing everything they can to inject their religion into the public school system. And for years now, the courts have stopped them, but that may be about to change. Okay. So this is very disturbing. And to understand what's happening, let me show you this article. This is posted on a website called Reveal News in 2015. That's when this article was written. Megachurch helps California school board blur church-state divide. And look at what this says. Bible verses, calls to accept Jesus, and the promise of eternal life can be heard in two disparate places in a southeastern suburb of Los Angeles. The Calvary Chapel Chino Hills Megachurch and the Chino Valley Unified School District Board of Education. 3 of the 5 school board members worship at the Evangelical Church on Sundays. 2 of them continue praying and preaching during the board meetings on Thursdays. So that's disturbing. And what this article basically said is these people are talking about culture war issues at school board meetings, even though those have nothing to do with each other. Like, why would you talk about gay marriage? Why would you talk about abortion at a school board meeting? They have nothing to do with each other. Why would you try to do prayers at a school board meeting? That doesn't belong there either. But the church was very influential. And the same article even said at the time, getting the blessing of the giant church, which says it has 8,000 registered voters, matters in the Chino Valley School District, where the highest vote getter in the 2014 board election received just over 11,000 votes. So if you can get the church on your side, you have a good chance of getting elected to this school board. Okay, by the way, the megachurch we are talking about here is run by a guy named Jack Hibbs, Hibbs. You can Google him. He's very political in what he does. He's really only known for pushing like MAGA cultism. You're never going to see articles about him promoting Jesus. It's always about, here's what we can do for Republicans. Okay, so 3 of those board members at the time were members of Hibbs Church and using their powers to turn school board meetings into religious revivals. I'll even show you at the time. This is before that article was written, but this is a Facebook post from Jack Hibbs in 2012. He's literally telling people, vote for the best person for the job, like these people for the school board. Like, he's literally endorsing a candidate for public office, saying this is how you vote biblically. That's what the pastor was doing. And by the way, the church did it too. This is what the church did in 2010. Our own James Na, Chino Unified School Board member, successfully spearheaded a campaign to reintroduce the Bible back into the public schools as history and literature. Like, the church is bragging about what one of their members was doing after he got elected to the school board because he was using it to promote their religion. So that's who we're talking about here. And what the Reveal article also said, and I think this is worth pointing out as well, look at what else this church did. The Chino Hill congregation heavily lobbied the school district to get the Bible course approved as an elective for seniors. Church members raised and donated $4,000 plus to the school district to pay for the 75 textbooks for the class. The proposal for the Bible class came as the district was facing a potential $30 million deficit and was slashing some of its more rigorous course offerings. So they're getting rid of their actual classes and adding a Bible elective class. Okay, so my point is, while the church endorsed candidates did not win every election, they always won enough of them to make a difference. And the church backed majority, this school board, I want to repeat, this public school board, they passed a resolution opposing same-sex marriage in 2008. They spearheaded the Bible class as an elective several years ago. They also opposed a state law intended to protect trans public school students. So the point is, the megachurch's involvement in this particular school district has always been a problem for like well over a decade. And the school board has always tried to turn itself into church services. And because of this, because they were literally praying at board meetings, the Freedom from Religion Foundation sued them in 2014. Well before the media was really paying attention to what was going on here. FFRF said in their lawsuit that the Chino Valley School Board, the board meetings resembled a church service more than a school board meeting. And guess what? In 2016, a district court said FFRF is right. And they said that the board's prayer resolution and constant proselytizing at meetings, it constitutes unconstitutional government endorsements of religion in violation of the plaintiff's First Amendment rights. That's what the court said. And because of this, the board had to pay legal fees to FFRF of over $200,000. That's good news, right? But it did not stop there, because guess what that school board decided to do? The school board made up of these evangelical church members. They said, wait a minute, that's just what the court said. Let's appeal this decision and see if a different court says something different. And in 2018, an appellate court weighed in, and guess what they said? They said, what the hell are you people doing? You can't shove Christianity into public school board meetings. So they lost again. That's good news, right? No, because they said they decided to vote to appeal that decision. They said, well, those were just 3 random judges assigned to our case. Let's ask the entire Ninth Circuit Appellate Court to override what 3 of their judges said. And in late 2018, the entire Ninth Circuit said, we are not looking at this case again. This is not a controversial case. Like, we'll stick with the earlier decision. So there was only one option left. Do you want to appeal to the US Supreme Court? But the problem is, by the time 2018 rolled around and they had to vote on whether they wanted to appeal this anymore, the school board now had different members. And guess what? One of those church members did not run again, and she was replaced by someone else. And the new board of Chino Valley School District, they voted 3-2 to not appeal to the US Supreme Court. So the case was over. They were finally admitting defeat. They agreed to take the loss. They agreed to pay the legal fees and just be done with this. And by that time, the legal fees were about $282,000. So that's the good news. But it didn't last very long. So all that happened in 2018. By 2022, guess what? Conservatives regained control of that board after this woman over here, I'm going to show you. This is an article from the Daily Beast in 2023. But basically, let me see if I could pull this up here in just a moment. This woman, her name is Sonia Shaw. She is a member of that same megachurch. She got elected to the board. And basically, by the time she got elected, she won her race, get this, by a total of 317 votes. because it's a school board election and not a lot of people cared. But when she got elected, it gave the megachurch control of the school board again. And by the way, after Sonia Shaw joined the board, she became the board's president. And the reason the Daily Beast was writing about her is because she was even crazier than all those other people. They cozied up to right-wing extremist groups like Gays Against Groomers. She passed a resolution supporting a bill that would out trans kids to their parents if they identified as a gender that wasn't declared on their birth certificates. One high school counselor proposed building a private office in a wellness center so students could take mental health breaks. And she said, we can't do that because you're going to turn it into a Planned Parenthood clinic inside the high school. And because she started making a big deal out of this, a big group that was fundraising for that project decided to back off, and there was harassment against the school staffers. So that's what happens when this Christian megachurch takes over the school board. So where are we at today? Today, the names may be different, but Sonia Shaw is still on the school board. The other names are different, but like the Chino Valley Unified School Board, which has 5 members, it is currently 100% made up of right-wing zealots. They don't all belong to the megachurch, but it doesn't matter because they're all insane. But the one thing they have not done, because the court said they could not do it, is bring prayer back into their meetings, because the court's already said that's illegal and they lost that case, right? So guess what happened this past February? Look at this article from March in a local newspaper. Chino Valley School Board revives prayer lawsuit. Look at this. The board voted in closed session at its February 20th meeting to authorize a right-wing group called Advocates for Faith and Freedom to challenge the prayer lawsuit on behalf of the district. The vote was 4-0, with board member James Na absent. James Na is a member of the megachurch. He wasn't there. He would have voted for it too, but it was a 4-0 vote. They voted to revive this old lawsuit. Now, can you even do that? According to their lawyers, remember the Supreme Court voted in 2022 in that Kennedy case, the one about the showboating, selfish football coach who wanted to pray at midfield? That decision by the U.S. Supreme Court killed off what's called the Lemon test, which is the test that basically lets judges decide if something violates church-state separation rules. The Supreme Court said the Lemon test is dead, so we can't use that anymore. And these conservative lawyers for the school board say, well, then church-state separation is also dead, which is not true. But they say, therefore, school board meetings can have Christian prayers because that's just tradition in America. None of that makes any sense, but that is the argument they're going with. And last week, they filed an official lawsuit with the U.S. District Court for the Central District of California. You could see the date they filed this, July 31st, 2025. And they are basically saying, we want you to bring back this lawsuit. We want this district court to revive this old case because the Supreme Court's recent decisions would help our side, even though we lost in the past. And this is what they are saying in the actual lawsuit. Check this out right here. The law on which the injunction was based has since been overturned by the Supreme Court in the Kennedy decision. The board, which consists of several new members, now desires to implement a policy allowing for invocations to start school board meetings that comply with the history and tradition of invocations prior to public meetings of deliberative bodies and in particular of school boards. As a result, we want this court to undo that injunction now and allow our new board to create a policy that allows us to have Christian prayers before meetings in a manner that comports with current law. Now, here's the thing. What has the Supreme Court said about prayer? They said city councils can have invocation prayers as long as the door is open to anyone who wants to deliver one, and it's not specific to one religion or anything like that. They have not said that rule applies to school boards. You cannot have invocations at school boards. These people are saying, yes, you can. It's part of America's history. And that's bullshit. Can you imagine what will happen if this attempt to revive a lawsuit that they lost years ago, if they are successful? If they are successful, school boards around the country will institute Christian prayers at their school board meetings. So many public school districts will start to do that. And that will happen at school board meetings where children may be obligated to attend. And Chino Valley's board, all they want to do is expose kids to their preferred religion, and they don't give a shit about anyone who's not a Christian or their particular brand of Republican Christian. Now, the Freedom from Religion Foundation saw this and they said, oh, we're still doing this again? They said they are planning to fight this. The board's latest move is a troubling effort to defy long-standing constitutional protections and reintroduce religious coercion into public meetings. FFRF remains steadfast and committed to ensuring that Chino Valley residents, regardless of belief or non-belief, are free from school board imposed religious ritual and proselytizing. The state church watchdog will file a forthcoming response to the board's motion and seek to keep the injunction in place. So I'm glad FFRF is going to fight this. I would hope the judges are like, no, we're not doing this again. We already wasted our time with this lawsuit years ago. You lost. You don't just get to come back and complain. Also, the law you are citing doesn't apply to you. There is no tradition of Christian prayers at public school board meetings. We did not have public school boards at the beginning, at the founding of this country, much less when public education was introduced, we made it a Christian-only thing. So all of this is BS, but this is what they are pushing for. The judges should not change what they're doing, because even if the Lemon test is dead, church-state separation, for now, is very much alive. There's no tradition that has Christian invocations at board meetings. But none of this is surprising. This is what happens when you elect Christian zealots to secular positions of power. They don't care about kids. They're not doing any of this for the kids. They're doing it because their right-wing Republican pastor wants them to do it, and their church community wants them to do it. And this is bad news for people who don't believe that one conservative evangelical megachurch should guide school board policies. Unfortunately, when you have school board members who are guided by religious zealotry, this is what they're going to waste their time doing. So I will leave it at that. What questions we got here? Otherwise, I think I'm done for the day. Imagine having a health clinic attached to your school that included OBGYN and mental health services. I know that would be wild. That's not what they were going to do. They just wanted to help kids with mental health things. And these people were like, no, you're going to do all the abortions in there. Because they just make things up. Because they're conservative Christians. And they don't think Jesus cares if they lie. This is why we can't have nice things. I really feel like there should be a civil lawsuit against the board members for wasting district funds on the ground that the board is acting on ideological grounds and in an illegal manner. And again, this goes back to like if a judge does something you don't like, you don't get to be mad at them because they did something you don't like. But in the case of the school board members, the community needs to decide if this is what they want their board to be doing and vote them out. And there needs to be an organized response to override the church's power and influence here. If enough people who are not part of this megachurch would care about school board elections, they could vote all of these people out of office eventually. But it's really hard to get people to care about local elections for anything. So there's not going to be a lawsuit against board members for just being bad board members, because there is a system in place to get rid of them. But if enough people don't give a shit about it, it's not going to change. There is a statute of limitations on appeals, and ex post facto appeals are not a thing. I will tell you, I don't know what the system is for that. I would assume if they're filing this, it's because they think there's a chance they could get somewhere with it. So I don't know what the statute of limitations is on it, or what. My fear is that if they don't get their way with this lawsuit, they're just going to start praying anyway, and they're going to force a church-state separation group to waste their resources to try to put a stop to it, even though the courts have already said they can't do this. All right. That's it for today. I should be back next Thursday night. Thank you guys, everybody, for watching. Thank you so much to Den for helping out with moderation. Remember, you could subscribe to my newsletter at friendlyatheist.com, and you can always support the channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. I appreciate it. All right. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next week.